Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 95. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, just about a little less than 1 week until the NFL Combine kicks off, so super excited for that. Still pretty quiet until then, but once the Combine starts, free agency is right on the doorstep, and we're off and running towards the NFL Draft. So it is really kind of the calm before the storm, as Pittsburgh reportedly meeting throughout this week to make their decisions and chart their offseason outlook when it comes to free agents and, of course, the all-important quarterback conversation. So, Dave, how you doing?
Happy Friday. I have recovered from the Four Nations loss on Thursday night. What did you think about that game? Thought it was a great game overall. Thought it represented hockey real well. I know a lot of people were interested in that thing. I'm interested to see what the ratings did for it, but obviously disappointed that the USA lost to Canada. I was hoping if they did lose to Canada, maybe Sidney Crosby would be the one that got the winning goal there, but obviously it went in overtime, and you got the dramatic, kind of sudden death walk-off type situation there, and Canada came up out on top, but obviously enjoyed that game last night.
Yeah, I echo your thoughts. Great game, heartbreaking loss. Pennington made some amazing saves in overtime. And, when Canada first scored, for a split second, I thought it was Crosby because I saw the 7 on McDavid's jersey as he turned, and then I realized it was Connor McDavid. There's a lot of conversation about, because you're right, wildly successful. The NHL did a great job with this, ton of attention. The ratings, I assume, are going to be just astronomical for this Four Nations game. I was certainly tuned in for it, as you were as well. So other sports are wondering, can they implement something similar for their all-star games? I wonder what ideas you could have for the NFL, because it's not obviously international the way that hockey is, the way that even basketball could be set up. And so, I saw some suggestions today about, do it by conference where they went to college at, SEC versus Big Ten, that kind of stuff. It just doesn't seem like it's going to work the same for football the way that it does for other sports.
The only way you're going to get it to work, any type of all-star game for football, and I mean, basically it would have to obviously be at the end of the season, and it would have to be money motivated. And where would that money come from? Look, I mean, growing up, we've had this conversation a lot over the years and all like that. I mean, up until probably, I don't know, 15, 20, 18, 20 years ago, the Pro Bowl games used to be fun to watch. You actually had, I mean, you go back even to some of the games that I think even like Hines Ward played in. You had some hitting that went on with these things up until I guess I don't know what, early 2000s or whatnot. And then, obviously people, the economics of the game and the injury risk and all like that, guys started to wise up and all like that. And you started to see the competitive nature of that game kind of go away. The only way you're ever going to get that back to what it was to have substantial amount of money related to it. Now, the owners are going to say, I'm not going to, give my players extra money to go out there and potentially get injured. And the league, I don't think you're going to see the league do that either. It would have to be probably outside advertiser, coverage, in other words, like Netflix throw a lot of money at this thing to not only have coverage rights, but pay the players. But it still would just be an astronomical amount of money. And once again, because of the physicality of the game and the ability to get, I don't think you're ever going to see it anywhere close to what, and especially not close to what we saw in this Four Nations hockey tournament.
Sure. I mean, obviously they're not going to play for free, but the incentive for the Four Nations was not financial based. It was pride based. It was love of
Sure.
country. And that's what I think clicked. And maybe that could click for the NBA because of the international aspect, but the NFL obviously can't capture that the same. And so I
Yeah.
just don't really see that. I mean, I'm all for brainstorming it, and I'm okay with them scrapping the Pro Bowl as it became for the Pro Bowl games because the game became laughable. It feels like the last memory I have of the Pro Bowl being fun was Sean Taylor lighting up Brian Morgan
Right.
on that fake punt. He just, kind of ended there, it felt like. So I just don't think the NFL can do it the same way as the NHL.
Yeah, I don't either. No, obviously the Major League Baseball has the All-Star game, and that's probably the closest thing you come to an actual real game, competitive, trying, but also you don't have the kind of injury risk involved on top of it. I just think the days of the NFL and a good All-Star game are behind us now at this point. And look, yeah, even as successful as this Four Nations thing was, you still had some guys that got injured in this thing and didn't want to Kachuk brothers get injured even during this thing and was unable to play like the second half of this game against
Matthew
Canada.
Tkachuk.
Yeah, and all. And, teams are going to look at that and say, man, do we really want this kind of thing going on with this competitive nature and our guys come back from this thing and be unable to play in the season? And yeah, I think this was successful, but I'm going to be interested to see how even hockey is able to implement this moving forward. Because next year, I think you have the Olympics, right? And players are going to obviously partake in that. But I mean, how are you going to sustain and I mean that might be the one and only Four Nations Cup.
I hope not.
Yeah,
I think you're right. Part of the allure of this was because it's been so long to have international competition. And so if you have it every single year, eventually it's going to become a little more numb to it. And so maybe every other year, occasionally every couple of years in between Olympics, I'm probably not going to have it next year. I think it's probably a way to keep it fresh. My last thought on this, the only way to make things like, say, the NFL Pro Bowl matter is if the game means something beyond the outcome. And liken that to the way that used to be in baseball, the winner NL, would get home field advantage for the World Series. So unless you could have some sort of incentive to where it's going to matter materially for some other element of the season, I guess it would have to be the following season because you can't play the Pro Bowl mid-season the way that baseball and all other
right.
All-Star games can do it, unless you had some sort of incentive, and I have no idea what it would be, because the winner
Money.
can't host the Super Bowl. Now, it has to be like something like where baseball, where home field advantage matters, something like that is the only thing I can think of to make that game matter, and I have no idea where to even begin with that thought.
Yeah, I just you don't have the same international flavor, obviously, because it mostly being U.S. or mainly being a U.S. based and created sport and all like that. It's different with hockey and soccer and I guess basketball to some degree, and plus basketball doesn't have the kind of the injury risk I would say that goes along with the rest of it. I just the days of the old great Pro Bowl games are just gone, and we're just going to have
Hmm.
to accept that because and those guys aren't going to want to get involved in something even if okay the AFC winner gets home field advantage in a Super Bowl. I just don't think that means that much to them. Money, on the other hand, does, but I don't think you're going to ever be able to get that to the level that will get enough players to be interested in it.
Agree. They're getting paid now, and it's not changed things, and you could give them more, but how much will it take to make them care? It wouldn't be financially even reasonable to do that probably for the NFL or any advertisers. All right, Dave, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers here and now. Again, pretty quiet week, not a whole lot going on. Report coming out from it was Jeff Hathorn, who was on 93.7 The Fan earlier this week, Wednesday, reporting that he believes the team has interest in current, I should say, Cleveland Browns running back Nick Chubb, who's coming off that severe injury against Pittsburgh in 2023, came back midway through 2024. Obviously, Mike Tomlin has always been a big fan of Nick Chubb and giving him the respect with the Mr. label, the Mr. Chubb, as he does with some of those top guys like Lamar Jackson, Mr. Jackson. And so, a really, I guess the question is just, do you do you agree with Pittsburgh having interest? Do you have any desire to see Nick Chubb come to Pittsburgh?
First and foremost, I wonder what kind of going back over that report. He says, "I'll throw," and this is what Hathorn said. "I'll throw out a name of someone I know that they're interested in, and at least talking to." And then he goes on to say the medicals would that play out. Obviously, it would be a decision, but Nick Chubb is someone they would consider. We're talking about probably a 1 year deal, a prove it deal, an opportunity to get back on your feet, but there is interest. Uh, they can't talk to him right now. That's you can't talk to him when a player's under contract. That's tampering right now. And yeah, I know all the legal tampering stuff coming up ahead of free agency and all like that. But you know, if this early still in the off season, you can't have those conversations with a player and an agent right now. You just can't.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he misspoke, or maybe it was a comment about going to talk to, or just the team is talking about him. Talking, yeah, I don't know, but putting that aside, just the report is that Hathorn believes the team has interest in Nick Chubb. As you said, the important context be a 1 year deal, prove it deal, obviously, for a guy that just for my 2 cents, the dude just looked cooked last year.
Right.
I know he's coming off the injury. Oftentimes 2 years out makes you a better player to fully get past it. But at his age, with his wear and tear, now his second severe injury, had that one at Georgia. I was a huge fan of Nick Chubb. I thought 2, 3 years ago, Dave, I would have called him the best back in football, even better than Derrick Henry, even better than Saquon Barkley. He is not that guy anymore. Yes, I know you're probably going to do, the 1 year deal minimum, give that to anybody. Okay. But no, I just have no interest in Nick Chubb.
You kind of know me at this point now, right? Here's the thing. And maybe I try to look at these things with too much hyper focus and dissect these things, word for what people say. But here's the thing. He says, but maybe if someone they would consider, we're talking about a 1 year prove it deal. I mean, what above a minimum amount of money that even the Steelers would consider would be an amount that they would even be? Are we talking 3 million? Are we talking 4 million? You definitely not going to be more than 4 or 5 million on this guy if you did go that route with him. And personally, if you're going to do a 1 year deal with a running back with that kind of situation, I'd be more apt to throw out the idea of veteran benefit type deal, but and keep my guarantees real low. That way, I can cut them at the end of the training camp and preseason if things are not looking that way. And then on the flip side, you got to think Nick Chubb's going to think his worth is more than a minimum value deal based on what he's done in the NFL up until this point there. So. Long story short, I'm not buying any of this, and I don't want to buy any of it, even if it is true. I'm with you. There are better options in this draft class. There would be potentially better even options in free agency for a little bit higher price. Years ago, a couple years ago before that knee injury, Nick Chubb was one of the best running backs in the league. But I also believe that the position is a fungible one on top of that. So I'm not investing a lot of money in it at this point, especially a guy with the injury and the wear and tear that a guy like Chubb has. I don't think that the Steelers have a lot of serious interest in Chubb unless it was for a very cheap 1 year deal.
Especially in a year with a great draft class to choose from. You have so many other options out there. There's even a couple other free agent running backs you could look at if you really wanted to bring in a veteran of some sort to give you something there pre-draft. It's just this reminds me, and the comparison might feel a little bit silly, but remember when Pittsburgh signed Kevin Barlow all those years ago? Remember it's like the one Colbert signing that didn't make the initial roster.
Right.
It's kind of an older running back that didn't have much left. I think maybe Barlow might have even gotten hurt in training camp. Just reminds me of that. This is not a retirement home. This is not to bring players in because the we really respect them club. This is a Steelers roster that's trying to win. Nick Chubb serves to me no real purpose. And again, you just have those multiple knee injuries. I watched him last year. Obviously, when he came back, there was no juice, there was no burst, which was his calling card. A big, powerful, explosive runner. That was Nick Chubb in his prime. No question about that. He was not that guy. His average tanked to 3.3 yards per carry. Yes, the Browns O line was bad and hurt and aging out, but you just watched the guy, not the same guy. I mean, he should not. Yeah, if you did anything, it would be a 1 year deal for basically the minimum with no guaranteed money. Anything above is a mistake.
I'll see your Kevin Barlow and raise you on Nile Davis.
Who?
Don't you remember Nile Davis?
Yeah, KN. Yeah, I was thinking like with an N as his first name. Yeah, that was more recent. That's a good poll. I like it.
Yeah. How many people, and even at the time, weren't we throwing out around that time free agent signed during the key? Because you got the key signing period that runs from obviously the start of free agency until like, isn't it the first Monday or Tuesday after the draft takes place? Isn't that the and isn't that what they consider the compensatory credit phase of free agency, and then everybody signed after that doesn't count against the compensatory value? I believe that's when the date is. But when I remember all that talk about and even writing about guy. When was Nile David? What was the actual date that he was signed? He was signed on March 20th, 2017. Where's the time gone, Alex? It's been 8 years ago now. You were working for the site then, weren't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I was here.
And at that time, we're thinking, okay, an early signing in free agency, albeit I believe that was for the minimum or right there about, and talking about how free agents that Kevin Colbert signed during the main portion of free agency, most of them went on to make the roster, and obviously he didn't. He had some kickoff. Anyway, back to the talk about Chubb. I just don't see it. I'm not buying any of it. Period.
But we do know Mike Tomlin has always been a big Nick Chubb fan.
Sure.
So that is, I assume, the one thread you can point to of say that Mike Tomlin has always admired him. And if they let Najee Harris go, and if they release Cordell Patterson, the running back room gets really thin with just Jalen Warren, who we had the conversation about Wednesday about the tender. And so you bring him in. And obviously, I would assume if they were to sign Nick Chubb, that's not going to be, okay, the room is complete, we're done. They could still draft somebody and go into 25 with Warren, Chubb competing, a rookie, and probably one of your undrafted running backs you love to go see take off.
Talking about running back value and all like that. What did this team technically pay Cordell Patterson? I was thinking about this after we got off the podcast the other day, talking about the value of the restricted tender value for Jalen Warren. And if you go back and you think about what this team actually paid Cordell Patterson last year, it was what, $3.2 million in total cash, right?
Yeah, it was a decent contract.
Now, obviously, he had a base salary. His signing bonus was $1.9 million in his base salary. When they signed Cordell Patterson, what do you think do you think the role that he ended up playing with this team ended up what they envisioned his role with this team being, minus obviously missing a few games with injury?
Largely, yes. Remember, he was signed literally a couple hours after the kickoff rule was passed.
Right.
And so it was clear his response to that. And I think his agent was down there at the league meetings, basically knowing the rule was going to get passed, and he could try to get, shop his client immediately. So that was the catalyst for it. And then I think they probably had an understanding with the relationship with Arthur Smith. that Patterson would serve some sort of rotational, limited snap offensive role.
I guess what I'm getting at, did they get their value out of Cordell Patterson? There's an easy, obvious answer
Yeah.
to this.
No, of course not.
Right. But obviously right now is Cordell Patterson. He's got what 2.8 million, I think, left on his deal this year. He earned 3.2 last year, 2.8, I believe, this year. If if you're going to keep him at 2.8, what are you telling Jalen Warren if you only restricted tender him at the low amount?
Well,
And,
needless to say, that's
and,
business.
Right, and that's the way they would do it. But I mean, I would take it a little bit as of disrespect. I think you do it because you can do it, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what the rules tell you that you can do. But and then just looking at this value or what Cordell Patterson is set to earn this year, which is $2.8 million. I think you got to get, personally, I'll be surprised if he survives the beginning of March, but he could, and it not kill you, and you just wait till later in the offseason to cut him. But, I mean, if he's worth 2.8 million, what's a guy like Nick Chubb worth?
I just think Chubb is done. I mean, at least Patterson, in theory, has that return value. I mean, I think Patterson could get kept throughout the offseason because they have so much cap space and they'll even probably bumped up a bit more. We'll talk about the cap update here in a moment. But yeah, I guess the most charitable case with Patterson is to sit there and say he did look explosive in the Colts game before he got hurt. And could the injury with the ankle kind of just hindered him throughout the rest of the season? He came into camp, he was on pup, didn't get off to a great start, didn't start practicing until very, very late in training camp, or basically missed all of training camp, got some preseason work. Mike Tomlin did not put him on kickoffs, which he should have done. I don't know why he didn't. Tomlin said, "Oh, we're happy with his body of work and his resume," but with the new kickoff rules, you couldn't put that guy back there at least once and get one return in before Patterson took the field. I don't think Patterson ended up having an actual kick return until November because of the injury and teams booting away from him out of the end zone. So I guess that's a charitable way to look at Patterson, but I just look at the overall results in Patterson, the worst kick return average of any returner with double-digit returns last year. Pittsburgh finishing dead last in kick returns, one of only 4 teams to have a worse kick return average in 2024 than 2023, despite the modified rules, which encourages returns and more exciting run backs. And I just don't see the reason to keep him for the start of the season.
I was kind of minorly excited when they initially signed him just because of the
Same,
kickoff stuff and
same.
maybe a couple of carries here and there in the backfield and all like that. Then you saw him, I think, what was it in preseason, have that nice run up the gut for the touchdown there, and you think, okay, yeah, you can probably get a couple of carries out of this dude, but really outside of really just those couple of 2 or 3 runs against the Colts, and both 2 of those were blocked up. Probably the best blocked up runs this team had all season. To the right side there, he looked like he even had concrete shoes on. It looked like it literally looked every time he touched the ball like he was running in quicksand, you know. And I've had a love-hate relationship with Cordell Patterson dating all the way back to when he was drafted and the things that I said about him. And look, props to him for surviving in the league as long as he has, and being able to be a chameleon like positionally and all like that. But he's done. If you're gonna call Nick Chubb cooked, you got to call Cordell Patterson cooked as well too. So I don't even see a sense of holding on to him past the start of the new league year. But all in all, kind of wrapping all this up in a bow. Uh, this is it seems to be a good running back class. Lots of different sizes and flavors that you can get in that thing. Obviously expect Jalen Warren to get tendered at some level. Don't personally not expecting Najee Harris back, but could you go out there and get someone like a Rico Dowdle or something like that, not have to spend a whole hell of a lot of money on. There are just better ways to attack this, I believe, than going after a Nick Chubb.
As you said, there's a lot of flavors and different styles of running back in this year's class. Which flavor should they take? What approach, what type of running back should Pittsburgh be targeting in the draft? What kind of profile?
Yes.
Oh, come on.
I mean, look, yeah. The only way I find justification in spending an early round draft pick on a running back is one that just has the explosiveness of it. And I went back and this is kind of going to get a little bit into some draft talk here, but obviously of all the running backs I know the most about in this draft class, obviously Ashton Jitty I know the most about, the most visible. It looks like he's gonna. Some are wondering if he's gonna even measure in at 5'9" at the combine. I think on the NFL free combine page, they have him at 5'9" on the nose. People are wondering if he's going to show up at like 5'8", like 6'8" 3/4" or something like that, and all. And I was thinking, what did Jamar Gibbs measure in at? And he was right around 5'9". And look what he's done. But if there's a guy that can get to the corner and produce explosive runs and all, he's it. Real physical guy too, and plays bigger than his actual size. You can go out there and get guys, I think, that are 6 foot or 5'11", 6 foot, 6'1", 220. That can get 3 yards in a cloud of dust, in my opinion, all day long. If you're going to swing early at somebody in this draft class, it's got to be a home run hitter. It's got to be somebody like a Gibbs, I think.
So even putting aside the round, but just the type of running back, you would want the more explosive guy that may not have the
Absolutely.
power, that has more difficulty running between the tackles instead of the kind of classic big Steelers bruiser, tough mutter.
Look, even if this guy, it is not is an explosive runner, but isn't great in between the tackles, I would still expect him to get 3.5 yards per carry.
Yeah, but you obviously need more than that just for a seasonal average. But you're
Right,
saying
but I
just
mean, he's going to
get what's
break.
want.
He's gonna break some off regardless. I mean, guys that are
Mhm.
explosive aren't just guys that are explosive outside. I mean, or shouldn't be. Gibbs can run between the tackles and all like that. I want somebody that gives me a chance on every carry to pick up 10 yards. You
Are
know,
there any names in particular you gravitate towards? You talk about that guy. I think about a Travion Henderson from Ohio State, who I think is one of the
right?
couple of backs in this class who has true home run speed. I think about RJ Harvey. He's got some size too. I think it's kind of a good blend. Devin Neal is a guy that I don't think has that elite long speed the way a Henderson does, but he's going to be, I think, a mid 4.4 kind of a guy that might have a best of both worlds with some size. He's got the workhorse mentality, shoulder to load at Kansas, but has some explosiveness and juice to hit the hole and create some of those 20-yard runs.
Yeah, I mean, and most of these guys I think are a little bit on the smaller size. That Tootin out of Virginia Tech. You previewed Taj Brooks, right? And he a little bit undersized, under
He's
5'10".
he's shorter, but he's
Right,
stocky. He's a
right.
bigger back.
Obviously Genty. Uh, I mean, you it's stealing in the NFL anytime that you get a run of 20 yards or more. It's partial stealing anytime you get one with 10. Something that Jaylen Warren has done good at so far in his career for the amount of carries that he's had is at least runs of 10 yards or longer. I think something like, what was it, 14% of his carries have actually done that. Now, here the bad side is he hasn't broken a lot of the 20-yard. He has the ability to do it. It feels like he just has it. And is that the blocking? How much is the scheme? How much does all that play into it there? Once again, the value of the guys like the Gibbs right now, and I don't know, name another back that's been explosive last couple of years. Obviously, Derrick Henry, is another one. Those guys can home run it on you, and and
Hmm.
and and they're huge threats, and those guys are built entirely different. I mean, if you look at Derrick Henry coming off the bus, he's that guy's impressive. I mean, that guy is impressive. But do you think of a guy that's going to go 80 yards by looking at him coming off the bus?
Yeah, you don't get the true sense of Derrick Henry until he takes a handoff and he's, running away like he's 20 pounds lighter.
Now, obviously, Gibbs is a different story with his size and build and all like that. I This just goes back to the fungibility of the position, in my opinion. You got to give me a reason to not stick to the fungibility.
Well, aren't these examples reasons? Isn't Derrick Henry a reason? Isn't Saquon Barkley a reason? Isn't Gibbs reasons of
Sure,
cashing in on investing in the position?
sure, but it's also a reason why you shouldn't have taken Najee Harris in the first round because he
Yeah, but
wasn't that explosive guy.
right. But if the logic is if there's that explosive guy, then take him in the first round. That doesn't make him fungible. It just means finding the right talent.
Right, but my whole argument all this time is if you're going to take one, and this even harkens back to back when they took Najee, was the fact that he just there, other than just being a mutter, being a 3.5, 4 yards in a cloud of dust, physical kind of running back. What has he done at the college level to make you believe that he can be an explosive play guy and worthy of a first round pick?
Yeah, to me, the conversation's not about was Najee Harris the right pick. When you talk about the fungibility of the position, I'm just looking big picture. Is it
But
worth
the fun,
investing?
his skill set and his fungibility did not play into why reasons why I thought it was acceptable to draft him in the first round. I mean, if obviously the guy they easily get the most excited about when it comes to potential big runs is Genty, right? In
Sure,
his
he was.
class.
Yeah, he had just a book full of them in college. Sure.
Right. You can say buttload.
I was just trying to find any word. I was tripping up on the word there, but yeah, he had a crap ton, buttload, whatever phrase you want to use. He had a bunch of them.
Right. But who else really that you've seen so far that you
I
would
mean,
potentially
well,
spend a first round pick on?
yeah, to spend a first round picks on a different story. I mean, the mock drafts that have come out, for whatever it's worth, still pretty early in this process, pre combine, have had three running backs in the first round. Marion Hampton from North Carolina, Travion Henderson from Ohio State. Henderson is that big play kind of a guy. He's not him and Genty are built completely differently. Genty's a power, contact balance kind of guy. Henderson to me is a real speedster. Hampton's a little bit in between, more the Genty type, tough guy, contact balance, runs hard. I want to see how he tests. I didn't get a great when I watched him on tape, did the report on him. I thought he was just average athletically. Maybe he'll surprise me with how he tests. And so, in terms of the other first round guys, if Omarion Hampton can come in, test really well, his production's off the charts. He's pretty well rounded as a blocker, receiver, runner. That would be a guy that could potentially enter the first round conversation.
Right. Okay. I'll read these off from the quote unquote five experts from ESPN. Their rankings of the running backs here. Mel Kiper, uh, Matt Miller, not the biggest fan of his. Reed. Oh, I'm sorry, four guys, and Field Yates. Kuiper has Genty, Hampton, Dylan Sampson, LaQuint Allen, and Quishon Judkins as his top five. Miller has Genty, Hampton, Judkins, Caleb.
Bless you.
Caleb Johnson, Travion Henderson as his top five. Reed has Genty, Hampton, all these guys have the same top two right now. Genty, Hampton, and Reed goes Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, and Quinshon Junkins. Yates has Genty, then Caleb Johnson second, Omarion Hampton third, Travion Henderson, and then he has Trevor Etienne as his number five. So you got a lot of Genty, Hampton, and Judkins really seem to be, and maybe Henderson mixed in here. So, of these guys, it feels like, at least early on in this process, Genty or Hampton are really your only two potential first round guys.
And potentially Henderson. He was in Daniel Jeremiah's first round mock. He was in Todd McShay's first round mock. I think first round's really pushing it on Henderson, but he's kind of in that top 50 is how he's perceived right now, right or wrong. That's kind of where he is. I think Caleb Johnson is interesting. Could be that blend for Pittsburgh, a size, some power, but also some explosiveness. So that's a guy that I also want to check out at the combine. Um, I do wonder if Pittsburgh, because why they've always drafted those big kind of mutter running backs is because for the longest time they had a workhorse approach. The running back had to be the guy, the first, second, third down, all situations, every carry. There was no committee. It was you're the guy. Le'Veon Bell, Mendenhall even had a 300 plus carry season. Najee Harris his rookie year. Now that you have Jalen Warren, and now that Pittsburgh has shifted towards a more common committee approach, maybe they would require a running back who doesn't need to be built and big and tough to handle 300 carries a season because they're going to split the workload. And so maybe the size becomes less of a concern, and that can allow them to focus on more explosiveness.
I'll lose my ever-loving mind if they draft a running back in the first round. Now, I will admit, Ashton Genty, if he's there, it would just at least be fun from a statistical fungibility versus explosiveness, all the kind of stuff that I like to talk about aspect. But I don't know if I'm willing to use the Steelers as the guinea pig within that. Now, look, I like Gibbs coming out. I viewed him more as a second round guy. I believe overall, but he certainly looked that Lions offense because of the tag team that they had. But it was a tag team, right? Is Gibbs a guy that you can give the ball to? You think 320 times a season?
No, he's a committee guy. That's why, like you said, there was that Sonic and Knuckles backfield in Detroit.
Right. Now, if you're one guy away, if you're one running back away as part of a committee to get you where you need to go, okay. But the Steelers are not. You know what? We're going down a lot of rabbit holes here. We did not know that we was going to go this direction today, but there's so many things that are going off in my head right now, especially after Daniel Jeremiah had his damn near 3-hour long draft conference call with the media yesterday, and there wasn't. I mean, I learned a lot from it about a lot of different players, not so much Steelers stuff related in that, but he had a great analogy. He was asked a question. I don't know if you picked up on this before because you and I had to break off and go on another call there. But he was asked about the Washington Commanders and there being a push to get Jalen Daniels more weapons. And the media member said something along the lines of always felt like when you had a quarterback like that, he can raise the level of receivers more than having to go out and get star receivers and all. And Daniel Jeremiah had a great response to this. He said it kind of always used the analogy of you have to shop at the hardware store before you go to the toy store.
I like that.
And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. That are the Commanders at a point where they should be shopping at the toy store, or are they still in the hardware, having to add the more mechanic, the bigger, heavy, pieces of the puzzle to this thing. I thought that was great, and it's such a simple analogy and all like that. But when you look at the Steelers right now, they need to be at the hardware store. They don't need to be shopping at the toy store just yet. And I view a first round running back as being shopping at the toy store.
Yeah, I think we're aligned on that. I'm not advocating for Pittsburgh. They must take a running back in the first round.
Even in the second round, it feels like it's too early for the Steelers to go to the toy store. And I suppose that you could say that that's wide receiver as well too, but I'd be more okay, obviously, with a wide receiver in the second round than I would a running back in the second round.
I would just say two things. I mean, I've made the point, I like DJ's analogy better than mine, but I likened it to the cherry on top of the sundaes when you
Right.
take the running back in the first round. When everything else you have in place, the running back is that cherry on top that can really put you over the top, whether that's drafting a running back like Gibbs or signing that free agent running back like a Saquon Barkley, like a Derrick Henry. And also it helped the Lions that year had 2 first-round picks. They took Gibbs, they took Jack Campbell, the linebacker from Iowa, so they had some extra kind of flexibility in the first round that Pittsburgh won't have. I would also just say that at least this time, Dave, if hypothetically they took a running back in, say, the top 2 rounds, they built the line first. They've invested in the offensive line heavily the last 2 years. Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick. They have really paid a lot of attention to investing in the O-line. How well will those results go? We'll see. Frazier looks good. Broderick is shaky. Fautanu, jury's out on. But in 21, they took the running back before the O-line was even invested in, and they kind of did it backwards. And so at least this time it would be a more logical way of how to build your run game, build the O-line first, invest there, and then go running back.
All right, just to kind of review real quick, kind of the explosive run stats that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Ashton Jeanty had a 5.6%. Here's the other thing he was asked about as well, too, Daniel Jeremiah, about the workload. Jeanty comes out of college with the, I guess when it comes to this draft class, 750 total attempts, the third most attempts behind Taj Brooks, Devin Neal, and being the 2 at the top of this draft class there. And then it goes Jeanty and then Judkins at 739. How many carries did Gibbs have coming out of college?
I can check. I don't know exactly how many he had.
Wasn't it around 300 something? I mean, wasn't it considerably less?
Wouldn't surprise me if it was less. He had 383. Good memory.
That's more like 400, so don't give me too much
Well,
credit there. I'll take it,
you're in
though.
the ballpark.
All
Yeah,
right.
you're in the area.
All right. How much does that bother you?
I think there's been some studies done on correlation between, basically when running backs go over the cliff on X number of total carries, NFL, college. I forget the details. It's been a while. It all just depends case by case. What is your run style? Are you a physical bruiser? And, that's going to be more impactful on a high number of carries than somebody that's a little more of a scat back and avoiding contact. So it plays a factor, sure, but it's not going to prevent me from drafting Genty, say, in the first round.
Okay. Of based on draft capital and all like that, how many guys or what positions could the Steelers draft this year that would play an exorbitant amount of snaps as a rookie and help them in 2025 and 2025 only?
D-line,
No,
corner.
I'm offense. I should have said offense.
Oh, offense. I mean, running back would, receiver would.
Are you going to have a rookie wide receiver come into Pittsburgh and play 600 snaps?
I mean, if you're drafting a guy in the first round based on the current construction of the offense, how do you justify sitting that guy?
Right. Okay.
So
But there's 2 positions, right? It's wide that we're talking about here, running back and wide receiver, right?
I mean, you get in the quarterback, I guess, but that's kind of a wild card. Let's assume there's no rookie franchise quarterback coming this year. Sure, then it becomes running back and wide receiver.
All right. Let's say you did take a running back in round 1. Choose your flavor, and most likely, if they were to do it at all, it would probably be because for some reason that Jeanty dropped to him. What's that guy going to give you are you in helping you right now today try to win a championship? How much does he move the needle, I guess?
He doesn't get you to that status, no, but does any draft pick that's not a rookie get you to that status? I don't think anyone alone does.
All right. The moral of my story will always be I've got to have a damn good reason to draft a running back in the first round. And it's got to be related to being able to have the ability to shop at the toy store. And then I want that toy to be able to give me Jamar Gibbs explosive runs.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm with you. Like, I'm not a crazy proponent of first round running backs, mainly because if I who I draft in the first round, I want to be a 10-year player for my franchise, a multiple
Mhm.
contract, decade long player. And the odds of a running back doing that just based on wear and tear, I know when I draft a running back, the odds of him seeing a second contract are not good. And the odds of me being happy with giving him a second contract if I do are not good either. A lot of disappointing second contracts when it comes to running backs. Todd Gurley, for one example, comes to mind. And so I'm not. I think what Pittsburgh will do, what they should do, is that second to fourth round when it comes to running back, because the class is steep, because the lack of positional value relative to D line, to corner, to wide receiver makes sense to go that position in the first round, and then you go running back to for me between rounds 2 and 4.
All right. How did we even go down this hole this morning?
It's only we are capable of doing. All right,
What
Dave, let's
what
go
did what did
down
we start with talking?
Nick Chubb. I mean, it's
Oh,
all
no,
about
we
running
went
backs
Chubb.
related.
Yeah, we went all the way down that. All right. Well, at least we got some draft talk in here. Is there anybody not in these four guys top five that you would put in there?
As my top 5 running backs just in general.
Yeah, I mean, the consensus obviously Genty's going to be at the top of the list. It seems like most of the consensus is Hampton out of North Carolina second, and then obviously it goes in different directions. Right
Mhm.
there, both of the Ohio State kids are obviously I think probably deserve to be in that top five, top seven range there. Caleb Johnson, you'll find him in a lot of top fives. But is there anybody that could be in that consensus top four, top five? From there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of go flavors after you get past the top talent, and it depends on the type of running back that you want. So probably not, but will Caleb Johnson turn heads? How he tests? I do like Devin Neal. I watched not that he's going to be maybe a top 5 guy, but LaQuint Allen from Syracuse. I think maybe Kuiper, one of those guys had him in their top 5. Probably the
Kuiper
best.
had him number 4.
Yeah, best pass catching back in this year's class. And so again, different flavors, different styles. What do you want this guy to do? What role and what need is he going to fill? And so once you kind of get past the top elite talent that can do it all, then it becomes more of a flavor what you're looking for. But again, the running back class is deep. I like RJ Harvey from Central Florida. There's a ton of options here.
Let's see. Last year, how many were at the combine? Looks like 29 running backs at the combine last year. This year there are 31.
Yeah, similar number doesn't surprise me, but it's the strength where,
Right.
again, the comparison I made to that reader email last year was if you did a top 100, how many running backs would appear? I bet you a couple of dollars, Dave. The top 100 consensus this year have a ton more running backs than last year.
Right. And like kind of the I mean it is a deeper class, especially when it comes to that position and all like that. And I've seen several draft uh 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 main major media guys say even if you don't need a running back, you should draft a running back this year. So
Is there any one running back you especially like besides Genty? I don't know how much you've gotten to watch the class. I'm still working through some names myself. The combine I know will help illuminate some prospects for us, but any name in particular beyond Genty you really like?
I want to learn more about Blue out of Texas. Was at the
Oh
Shrine
yeah,
Bowl.
okay, yeah. Had a couple of touchdowns in the national championship game, couple of receiving scores. Yeah, it's a good call. Jaden Blue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't think he's won. Oh, I did have him down here. He only had though, according to he only had 214 carries in college. He's at the bottom of the list. 4.7% 20-yard gain percentage, which that's if you look at Ginty, that's a little bit low. I believe that was around the average of that group of backs that I did. And really his 10-yard run percentage wasn't all that high either. But once again, he had, the smallest sample size of the group. So 214. So I want to spend some time uh, based off a few clips that I've seen of him to go back and look at some of his stuff as a mid round guy.
Yeah, I like that. It's a good call there. All right, Dave, let's go to a salary cap update. We talked a lot about the salary cap on the Wednesday show since you had given the update following the Preston Smith release. but the NFL, right on cue, knowing you're back in town, could offer the report of giving a good idea of what the 2025 cap will look like. It's not an exact number, but it's a good range for teams to work off of, and it's higher than the projected numbers that were floating around and we were working off of in our Wednesday show and for your post that you did, Dave. So the projection is somewhere between 277 million and 281 million. I assume that number will be finalized before the start of the new league year, but that comes in higher than the projection of 272 and change billion we were talking about last time. So of course everyone benefits from that, but for a team like Pittsburgh that already had a ton of cap space, they get even more.
It's all relative to the league, though, right? If you look at it at the Steelers and say, all right, it helps the Steelers. Well, it helps 31 other teams on top of it, too, as far as actual cap space goes. Helps the league, obviously. It helps the players as well, too, overall. And the NFLPA likes it because, obviously, over a 3-year span of time, teams have got to spend at least 90% of the total cap number in cash on the players. So it's obviously a win-win all the way around. And here's the thing about when you get into early offseason, you don't want to shoot too high when you come to a projection of what the cap number might be, because you don't want to give people false hope and all like that. I think over the last couple of years, guys like Joel Corey and Jason and over the cap and all use very conservative yet good ballpark estimations when it comes to league growth and what they expect the cap percentage. And I've been using for the last several weeks 272.5 million as a cap number, and it looks like the low end of the range, according to Dan Graciani and a memo sent out to teams, was that the low side of this thing will be 5 million more than that at 277.5 million, with the high side. So we're looking at anywhere between $5 and $9 million more than the predictions that were floating around of 272.5 million. I think over the cap right now is working off of a middle amount right between those two, which would put it at, I think, 279.5 million. I'm willing to bet that number comes in right at around there, 279.5 or 280 million, right around in there. If you work off a $279.5 million cap number, then the Steelers right now are currently right around 60 million under the cap there. Now, look, as I got into this thing and started learning more about the cap and the ins and outs, and and I still learn something about it every year when it comes to contracts and caps and revenues and cash and all like that. This is indeed all relative, so cap numbers can be manipulated, right? A team right now that per se is over the cap has got to get under the cap over the course of the next 3 weeks. And how are they going to do that? Either cutting players or restructuring players, and not necessarily giving players more cash, but moving the numbers around where they can lower the cap number, right? So cap, when you talk about cap and cash, and I know people hate these portions of these podcasts, but it's so important for people if they want a strong understanding about the financials, and especially related to free agency and all like that, that they really, really understand the difference between cap and cash. You can manipulate these numbers, and we've seen how many times over the years that the Steelers at this time of year are like $8 million over the cap, right?
Mhm.
And magically over the course of the 3 weeks, they get themselves where they're 33 million under, right?
Mhm.
It happened, different teams, obviously, depending on what year they are in, have different set of cap uh, issues that they got to solve to at least give themselves working cap space to accomplish their off-season goals and all like that. It's great to look at this and say, well, there's $5 to $9 more million in cap money, but there's also a percentage of that much more that goes into cash spending. What I'm trying to say here is that people have got to start looking at this thing more in a cash perspective in any given offseason. So let's assume that 279.5 ends up being the cap number, and if you times that by at least 90%, that means right around $251 million in total cash that we expect the Steelers to spend this offseason. And right now, the roster totals out with a cash number of the current rule of 51 at 170.5. So, I mean, what's the number that you and I have thrown around? At least $100 million in cash. And look, that number could go even lower if they cut a guy like Larry Ogunjobi, Cole Holcomb. You're talking about another $13 million roughly in cash that's on the books right now coming off that needs to be replaced there. So you can make these cap numbers say whatever you really want them to say based off of restructures and cuts and all like that. The real nuts and bolts of this thing, and where this increase in the cap number, I think, makes a significant difference maybe with the Steelers here, is in the cash, the 90% of that number potentially of that, let's say, $9 million increase coming in the form of maybe an extra player that you're going to spend a sizable amount of cash on, if that makes sense there. So, and here's the thing too, everybody wants to look at that, the Steelers being, let's say right now, $60.2 million under the cap right now. We've already spoken for roughly 16 million of that in forthcoming expenses for this team, right? That everybody wants to acknowledge, but nobody wants to really acknowledge and factor in that because even though it's not real tangible costs right now at this offseason, at some point those have got to be absorbed somehow, some way. Talking about the practice squad, I mean, that's $4.2 million. That's a sizable chunk, right? Your draft class pool offset is going to at least be $3 million, probably closer to $4 once this thing all shakes out there. So we've already got $8 million, and then you figure in the rule of 51, having to add a 52nd and 53rd player. That's it's almost another $2 million. We've got $10 million that we've already tied up right there. And then how much room is this team going to want in a extra space going into the season? I've got that number at $6 million right now. So realistically, low side, you're talking about $16 million in additional costs. So if you impact that onto the $16.2 million in cap space that you have in real time right now, you're looking more at a workable cap number about 44 million under the cap right now. What is this team going to do at the quarterback position, and what's that cap charge going to be on a guy like Fields or Russell Wilson or whoever else that's a veteran type guy? Are we looking at a $20 million cap charge, $18 million cap charge at least?
You would know better than I do, but that sounds like a good starting number to work off of. Sure.
All right. Let's say let's say the number for the cap charge of whoever the quarterback ends up being. Let's be a little conservative here, and let's say that's 18 million. All right.
Okay.
What's 44 million minus 18 million?
Oh, let me break out the old calculator. 26 million.
All right. So let's be even a little bit more conservative. Let's say the cap number for whatever quarterback you go with for 2025 winds up being 15 million. All right. And then let's give them actually $45 million in effective salary cap space after all the wash comes out and all like that. So 45 minus 15, that gives you $30 billion in effective cap space, right?
Yep.
All right. Uh, Now you're probably going to have an extension. Yeah, okay, let's go to Jalen Warren. What happens if you give Jalen Warren a second round tender of $5 million or more? That's going to at least be about $4 million more from the washout from the rule of 51, right? So let's just conservatively say that it cost you an increase of $3 million more in cap space. To tender Jalen Warren. We were at 30 million, and we just took 3 million away from that. That's 27 million, right? And when we haven't even got to free agency or re-signing, one or two of our own free agents at this point. See how you're already working that number down a little bit, and now you can get a lot done with 27 or 30 million dollars in cap space, but it's not as astronomical as it doesn't look as impressive as that 60.3 number, right?
Yeah, I mean that's fair, but I do look at, because you had mentioned 251 million is the 90%, right, for this year, and then Pittsburgh sitting at cash expenditures 170.5 million. That puts you at 80 and a half. Let's call it 80 million for a round number to spend in cash this offseason, and that is a hefty number. And frankly, Pittsburgh has to be above that because they weren't at 90% last year. So to
Right.
get over 90%, they have to do that probably this year and maybe next offseason as well, depending on how this offseason goes. And so if you're expecting 80 million in cash this year, that's going to involve some big moves. Now, yes, quarterback will be involved. TJ Watt extension could be involved. You will start chewing up that number fairly quickly. But even if you still spend half of that in cash on outside free agents, that's 40 million. That is no small chunk of change.
Right. But also let's look at this. TJ Watt is on the books for a cash expenditure right now, a little bit more than 21 million. What is it? You're going to pay him at least $21 million in cash, even if you don't give him an extension. We both agree that we think TJ Watt's going to get an extension this offseason, right?
Yes.
All right. What's the signing? What is the cash expenditure going to be for him? Now his cap number should come down as a result of an extension, but the cash charge will go up, right? Because let's say you got to give him 35, a total of, I don't know, 35 to $40 million in cash to get the deal done, right? And a lot of that obviously is going to be signing bonus related. So let's say you worked him off of a minimum salary, lower his minimum salary, but you're going to have to make in other words, your cash expenditure is going to go up on TJ Watt if you give him an extension this offseason. So some of that's going to go there. We talked about the quarterback deal, whoever it ends up being. Yeah, the cap number might be as low as, let's say, 15 million, but what's the cash expenditure going to be on that player? 22, 23, 25 million?
Yeah, like I said, you have that 80
Possibly
million.
more, likely more.
But you're still going to have money left over after you spend the
Right.
cash on Watt and on the quarterback position. It's going to be a good number, healthy number.
Right. Now, once again, you had asked me a couple of weeks ago how many legitimate, good, uh noteworthy conversation having free agents do I think this team's going to sign this offseason. And I said it better be at least 3, right? I mean, I think now you're probably looking in the neighborhood of about a good 4 of them.
Well, I think we had the conversation too about how many above, like double-digit average yearly value free agents will they sign. I believe I
Right.
said 2. I think you said 1. Are you still in that camp? With
No,
1?
I would move that to 2 or 3 now,
Okay.
probably.
I'm thinking receiver. What positions? And we're all kind of speculating a little bit in more general terms.
They're all obviously needs. Defensive line, uh, corner, uh, and wide receiver.
Yeah, I think the 2 that I'm looking at in terms of what makes sense for them to spend at areas of need are, and again, these are outside free agents, not internal re-signings. Quarterback will be one of them, assuming that one of Fields or Russ returns. Receiver and corner are the 2 that make the most amount of sense to me.
Right. And I could see, depending on what happens with Larry Ogunjobi, them going out and depending on who gets cut or whatnot,
Mhm.
around. They need to invest in that group, I think.
I 100% agree. I just think that's more likely to come through the draft, but they could add a lower level free agent, and maybe they do take a swing at a BJ Hill or maybe a Milton Williams or somebody else we'll talk about as we get closer to that March 10th and 12th and new league year start. Quick sidebar here, Dave. Omar Khan officially speaking Tuesday, 10 a.m. Tuesday, February 25th
It
at
feels
the
like it's normal spot.
usually an earlier time slot. So that full release of the uh, the coaches and GM speaking. Mike Tomlin will not speak, one of the few head coaches that will not be talking at Indy, but Omar Khan meeting with the media on the podium Tuesday at 10 a.m. So we'll recap what he has to say for the Wednesday show day after.
All right, and here's the thing on r- look, the NFLPA in the this is my favorite time of year in case you haven't been able to tell. The NFLPA will release the official cash spending numbers for teams from 2024 anytime now, within the next 3 weeks. They usually do it after, I think, the cap number for the the current year comes out, but before the free agency gets underway. So within 3 weeks, we should know what the actual cash number was for the Steelers in 2024, and that was the first of the 3-year numbers. So it makes it a little bit easier to kind of project ballpark of what the cash amount will be for 2000 for the second of 3 years. And then obviously when you get into the third year, it's a lot easier to kind of project that as well too. But do you understand why I keep trying to push people understanding the cash aspect of the spending versus the other,
Sure. No, I think it's an under
like the
discussed
cap?
part of the salary cap. It is so focused on the salary cap and what is the cap charge. We don't talk about cash too often. And as you know, too, there's all those little, not little things, but all those budget items, those line items of your practice squad, of your emergency reserves. We also don't think about when it comes to cap space. We look at the number and say they can spend all that money. Well, they can, but some of that is earmarked for other formalities that every team must consider.
All right, with the cap number, narrowed in now, and with us now, less than 3 weeks away from the start of the new league year, and we just talked about how many notable kind of free agents this team will potentially sign this year. Let's look at also that god awful hierarchy line in the sand that I'd like to talk about. That's Cameron Hayward right now at 14.5 million APY. And then let's go through the position groups real quick and say, will they spend above or beyond that hierarchy amount on a free agent or two this offseason? We'll start with cornerback. Will this team go out and sign a cornerback in free agency with an APY greater than 14.5 million?
I think it's gonna be close. Like I said, one of those double digit guys. I will say, though, it'll come under.
Me as well. Will it be greater than mm, will it be greater than 12 million?
I'm gonna put it in that 10 to 14
Okay.
range is
All
my
right.
guess right now.
Fair. Let's then use the a 10, whether or not it comes in over 14.5 million, which is Cam Hayward. And if you don't go over that, then you got to say it's got to come in over or under 10 million APY. So you think they go after a cornerback between basically between that range of 10 and 14.5 million, but definitely not over what Cameron Hayward's earning.
I don't want to say definitely not. That's just my feeling, and
Okay.
I've said I'm as uncertain about how they approach corner as any position. They're going to address it in some form or fashion. But what happens to Dante Jackson? I haven't looked at the full list of corners that will be available. Do they draft? It's a little bit murkier. I'm a little less confident there than I am in, say, receiver or D line. But that's where I'm at right now. Free agent between 10 and 14 million.
All right. What about, let's stay in the defensive backfield, a safety?
Yeah, below 10. Can have that third bucket up below 10. It'll be below 10 and well below 10.
Agreed. What about inside linebacker?
I mean, they'll hopefully re-sign Landon Roberts, who obviously come in below 10 and well below 10. So that's my expectation currently.
What about outside linebacker?
Same thing, below 10, minimal signing, if anything.
Right. What about defensive line?
That's the one that
You're definitely not going to bring a guy in that's earning more than Cameron Hayward at 14.5 million. I mean, 14.5 APY, right? Or they're
well,
not.
I don't think they will. But again, even if they do, is Cam Hayward going to get mad about that? I mean, he just
No,
wants to
no, no,
win.
no. I don't think they should. But I mean, if you look organizationally, that's why I keep throwing out, this hierarchy number. Will they?
Sure, sure. We agree the hierarchy is probably one of those precedents that have to get changed. But to answer your question, I don't expect it to be above Cam.
Might it be above 10 million now?
I mean, it could, but my thought is it's going to be D line will be driven by the draft, and so if they do add a free agent, which is not unreasonable, it'll be below 10.
All right. So far we have identified how many positions above 10 million. Corner.
Corner for me. I mean, you. What's your answer on D line?
I don't think it comes in above 10.
Okay, so you're just saying corner then defensively.
Right.
Okay, and then offensively.
Offensively, will they address an offensive lineman of any sort with an APY of 14.5 or greater? And if not, will they address one with an APY of 10 million or greater?
No to both below 10.
I'm with you there. All right. Quarterback's a whole different discussion, obviously. Tight end.
No, below 10.
Agreed. Running back.
And these are external free agents or just re-signings?
These are externals. These are all externals. These are guys not under contract with this team.
Not that I'm expecting Najee to come back or receive, 10 million plus if he does resign with Pittsburgh. But to answer the question, just for clarification, for external free agents, certainly no, below 10.
Okay. Where does that leave us? Wide receiver, right?
And that's where I think the big splash comes. I think it comes above that 14 and change million average yearly value.
All right. And definitely over 10.
Yeah, I said above 14, so
right.
over 10. What is your answer? I'm curious for your answer on
Yeah,
receivers.
I mean, I think it's definitely over 10. I'm not sure. Let me get this. My gut feeling is they just won't crack that 14.5 Cam Hayward number.
But you were confident they're going to sign multiple free agents over 10. You got corner, receiver. You feel like it might be a little bit dicey, that 10 to 14 range. Doesn't feel as slam dunk as I'm talking about it.
I still feel like you're only in the neighborhood of 2 or 3 guys, I guess.
Okay. I think it's where they're going to spend the big money to have the money. There's still a lot of options out there, whether that's trade, signings, guys to get cut. You're going to have a pool, even with Higgins likely off the board and Godwin looking like he's not going to be hitting the open market. I still am confident, that they're going to sign a veteran free agent at a good price tag.
Right. But do you think with people looking at this $60.2 million, people have one idea in their head of what free agency is going to look like for now. Look, you can obviously go out there and sign a lot of guys between that, APY of 5 to 10 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, gives you the ability to do something there. But how many guys are going to be that sexy that are on the market that are going to fit into that range even? And
I don't know.
and at what positions, right?
Yeah, we can debate all that.
Are you going to have an offensive lineman that's going to come into this team from the outside with an APY of 5 million or more?
I probably not, although offensive linemen on the market do tend to get overpaid, even for some depth purposes, but probably not. But could you do defensive line? Could you do inside linebacker if Roberts does not resign? That kind of stuff wouldn't shock me.
Right. I guess what I'm getting at here is people have in their head right now by looking at the cap, but still you've got to spend the cash on something. And that's why it's probably going to, bulk of that's going to come, obviously with a quarterback and whatever signing bonus you give that quarterback, whatever the extension for TJ Watt and the signing bonus for that looks like. Obviously you whatever you give, let's say corner is the position that you attack in free agency, and let's say that number rivals at least Cam Hayward, 14.5 APY. It's going to cost you probably $22 million at least in cash to get that done for 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I think my thought to your kind of question is, are fans maybe over expecting what Pittsburgh will do in free agency? I think if you sign a big money receiver, a good money corner, you re-sign, of course, one of the quarterbacks or whatever you do at quarterback, TJ Watt extension, a couple other positions, it's going to be a pretty exciting free agency, especially for a fan base that's used to dumpster diving in free agency. This will be a good change of pace this year, last year.
All right, how did you view last year's? I mean, Patrick Queen obviously setting a new record for outside APY of a free agent, right? Who else was added last offseason?
I mean, it was a hot start that kind of petered out. I mean, Queen was the big signing. Of course, there was Russ. It was cheap, but it was Russ. It was notable. It was pretty exciting in that, wow, this is headline news kind of sense. Cameron Johnston got signed. I think he's actually the first free agent maybe signing to sign, or him or Russ or somebody like that. And then it kind of got quiet. Yeah, Elliott. And then it became pretty quiet from there with the trio of dumpster diving receivers in Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller, Quez Watkins. Oh, I'm trying to think who else got brought in, but that was kind of the bulk of it.
This team is in position to add two notable wide receivers in free agency if they wanted to.
If they wanted to, I don't think they're going to add two notable receivers, especially with the offensive construction, but I think at least one.
All right. I would just say temper your expectations. Don't look at the cash picture, and you also got to look at the cap. When looking obviously at the cap picture, you got to remember that I think realistically after a quarterback deal gets done, that you could and you take into account the other 16 million or so that this team has to make sure they absorb at some point during the offseason, that cap number is going to start closing down real quick.
I don't want to completely go against what you said about don't focus or, consider the cash element, but just relatively speaking, is this the most amount of cap space Pittsburgh has had relative to the cap in basically team history? I know in the actual number, the 60 million, it is because the cap always goes up, and just in aggregate that it's the largest sum, but as percentage of the overall cap, what does the year-to-year number look like for Pittsburgh? I don't know if we can go back in time and find those numbers. If anyone can, it's probably you. But I'd be curious to see, is this like, because they're going to have let's just call it 280 million as the cap number this year. They're going to have roughly 21% of cap space available to them at the start of free agency. Is that the largest amount of space they've had to work with percentage-wise in 20 years?
I would imagine, especially since I've been kind of covering the, learning and because even in the early days of learning the cap, you think you know it, but you don't know it. You're always learning. But I mean, I feel I've got a real good grasp of this thing now. But going back in my head, and you got to remember most of the time that I'm learning this and understanding it, and then now looking back and being able to apply it, this team had a franchise quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger, right?
Sure, which always ate up a ton of money.
Which obviously ate up, and then you had him for a lot of years there. You had a lot of high quality players under contract too. You had Marquise Pouncey's. You had go through the list. I mean, even Cam Hayward's been around long enough to be included in that group. You had the Troy Polamalu's. You had go through the list of.
Yeah, it was just a very veteran laden Super Bowl competing team.
So yeah, and look, I mean, has the team been able to get themselves in a position with a lot of cuts and all in the past, where post come to start the new league year, they were looking fairly decent? Yes, but I mean, they're already there, and they've only made really one cut. That's Preston Smith, and that's because, I mean, that I mean, the guy just was not worth the amount of money that he was on the books for, right? So, I mean, they could technically not make the cuts of like Larry Ogunjobi and Cole Holcomb and be absolutely fine. And it has, I can't remember a time where they've been kind of in this position relative to the expected cap number with their real time cap space that is matched up like this. No.
Okay. And that's the other thing too is you talk about the importance of cash and reminding people of that. I just sort of remind people the cap is relative,
Sure.
to the era, and the cap has of course gone up, but salaries have gone up massively as well, as they should. Obviously, players should get paid as the NFL continues to grow and rake in billions of dollars. But obviously Patrick Queen is the highest paid outside free agent ever because in 2006 when they signed Jeff Harding's whatever year it was, the 40 million would have been the entire cap, from a contract like that. So numbers are always relative.
And here's the thing too: who in, let's say that they don't hit 90% cash spend this year. Well, they're obviously have got to figure out a way to spend that cash in the remaining to get them to. And look, the Steelers, people say the Steelers are cheap and all like that. No team in the NFL can be cheap these days, because the CBA says that you've got to spend 90% of the 3-year cap number in cash. You can get mad with how they spend it and who they spend it on, but you can't get mad at teams overall for being quote unquote cheap. Obviously 90% is the minimum. Teams are obviously encouraged to spend close to 100, if not 100%, if not more than 100% of the total cap number in cash over a 3-year span. And I think the Steelers are good for trying to get as close to that 100% number and basically do their share of spending in cash over a 3-year span. But let's if you fast forward, I mean, because right now TJ Watt is technically the only guy that we expect to get extended during the off season, right?
I know there'll be a conversation about Boswell, which is interesting, probably better to have in the summer months, but Watt is the one I'm currently expecting.
Right. And if you do anything with Boswell because of these silly precedents that they have, you're probably just going to move money forward like you did AB several
Hmm.
years ago. Because if you get into the situation of extending a player 2 years out, then you're going to have all these agents coming out of woodwork
Sure.
saying, "Hey, you extended that guy 2 years out. Why not us?"
Agreed.
And the only workaround from that would be as if they made Chris, and they should, if they were to do it 2 years out and actually give him a new extension, would be to make him the highest paid kicker. And then the conversation moving forward would be, all right, well, we only extend players 2 years out,
Hmm.
non-franchise quarterbacks, because we're making them the highest paid player at his position, right?
Like they did with the guaranteed money in the second and
Right.
third years. So agreed. And that also goes back to TJ Watt. And I think you should write about this, Dave, because no one's talking. We mentioned it briefly the one show, and I still think about this. To extend TJ Watt and to keep that guaranteed precedent, which I assume they will, Watt's deal has to get done sooner than later. Because what if a team, I know the Browns say they don't want to trade for Myles Garrett. What if they trade for Garrett? He's, of course, going to get signed probably pretty soon after getting traded for, to make him the newest highest paid edge rusher in football, and that could leave Pittsburgh in a tight spot. Also with
Right.
Micah Parsons, what's going to go on with him? There's trade rumors about him. You think Dallas would want to sign him, but who the heck knows? And so Watt is something that really I don't think can or should wait until August. This will have to be not a today thing because you're in free agency, you got a million things going on. We're not negotiating a Watt contract now, but like I don't know, post draft, April, and that quiet time. I think if you're Pittsburgh, if you don't get this deal done soon and one of those edge guys gets paid, you're going to be in a tight spot when it comes to paying TJ Watt.
Especially, and look, it feels, even in the negotiations last time, it felt at kind of at the end, Watt's like, just get this thing done, you know. Uh, uh, he's got, he He's going to be. This might be the last big bite of the apple that T.J. Watt gets, right?
Sure, but what if? I mean, we're not disagreeing, but what
No,
if?
we're not. And here's the thing too. There's that report yesterday, and I don't know how with Myles Garrett that if they don't trade him, they're going to try to throw him a buttload of
Right.
money.
That's what I was going to say. They throw him $40 million per year, or $38
Right.
million per year. Now, if you're Pittsburgh, to keep your precedent, you have to top that. And do you
Right.
want to top that? Then it gets tricky.
Right. Right. We're saying the same outcome here, just using different examples here. Yeah, I do think you need to try to get him done sooner rather than later, especially cap space is not going to be an issue. Cash obviously is not an issue. You got to spend it. People are saying why in the world? Some people in my Twitter feed when I mentioned this the other day saying, well, we can expect a T.J. Watt extension. People say, he's up in age, he's not producing. Why are you even going down that road? This team is pretty much in a cash spending situation where they have to spend the cash. And if they're going to spend that cash, that exorbitant amount of cash on a player, who's it got to be on now that's relatively worthy of it? It's TJ Watt.
And I still think he's worth it, but
sure.
But even putting that aside,
you've got to spend the cash
because there's no one else to spend it on, because Pittsburgh has not drafted well enough to extend out some of these first round picks.
All right, now I hate to get this far out in things, but this is usually time that if we're going to address this at all, it's right now. And we just agreed that T.J. Watt's probably the only guy that they're going to extend this offseason, right? And to be determined of what happens with Boswell, obviously.
Just real quick, could DeShon Elliott get an extension? It's not going to be huge money, but he's probably worthy of an extension.
Could it? I'm not going to sit here and bet my house that he won't. But I mean, if there was one player that maybe you'd consider doing it on this roster, we can obviously get into the George Pickens conversation and all like that.
Yeah, sure. But I'm just kind of raining to he's not going to get extended.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to move down the list of guys, he would probably be the next one on the list that you would consider.
Okay, just want to mention that.
But at that point too, you're saying this is going to be our strong safety for the next 3 to 3 years, which is realistic with the way he played,
Yeah, I mean, maybe a 2-year extension that's worth. What was his last year worth? $4 million per year.
His APY right now is $3 million.
Yeah, I don't know. 2-year deal worth $7 million. 2-year, $14 million extension. Something that seems reasonable, not out of the question.
Right. How many times have we seen this team though sign an outside free agent and then turn to a multi-year deal and turn around after the first year he's with the team and sign him to an extension?
Rare, but how often has a free agent come in and played as well and probably over his value the way DeShon Elliott has?
Sure. All right. Back to my train of thought here. Who of the current players under contract scheduled to be unrestricted free agents after the 2025 season? In other words, this time next year, who are we talking about getting a huge extension? And let's just say, because TJ Watt obviously is up after this year. But who of guys going into their final year next year, might we be talking about?
I haven't looked at a list. Obviously, Pickens. We'll see how the year plays out. Calvin Austin. Not that he's going to be a huge money guy, but that's a free agent after 2025. I have not looked at a list, to be honest. I assume there's no huge names there, but
no. I'll roll down the guys scheduled to be unrestricted a year from now. All right.
Okay.
Larry Ogunjobi.
Don't think we'll make it that far. He'll be lucky if he does.
Isaac Seumalo.
Interesting. He'll be in his 30s. He's already in his 30s, I believe.
Right.
We'll see.
Probably
on
not.
That. Not, especially with the guard market has shot up. Probably not as a good phrase for it.
Cole Holcomb.
Again, he'll be happy if he can get that far.
Miles Killebrew.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he resigns on some other small money deal, but obviously no big money there.
Cordell Patterson.
Again, running theme here. Happy if he gets that far.
Deshaun Elliott.
That's a guy certainly worth paying if you don't extend him. But again, his safety market's not particularly high, and he's not going to be one of the top safeties, so not going to be huge money, but someone worth paying.
All right. The rest of the list is just it's crop.
Was Calvin Austin on there? If he has a good
Austin,
season,
yeah.
give him $6 million per year. I don't know.
All right. But other than that, that's it. So who the hell are you going to spend? You talk about cash spend. Where's the cash spending going to be next year?
Yeah, that's fair. Could it be quarterback again? Go down that road. Still uncertain there, but point taken overall. The 2022 class is reflective of that. Was Kenny Pickett's gone. Pickens, if Pickens magically has a Boy Scout year and productive, then of course he'll get paid a ton of money. Probably get paid a ton of money by some team, even if he doesn't, but probably not Pittsburgh if the antics continue. And then you had DeMarvin Leal, and that's never worked out. Calvin Austin, Loudermilk.
I should throw in the fact that Joey Porter Jr. will be entering his final contractual season next offseason. So he obviously could be that's one area where they would probably end up spending some money at there.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. We'll see how it goes for Porter. Big year for him.
And who else from maybe that draft class?
Benton, Washington, Broderick Jones, but nobody that strikes me as on the precipice of getting extended out. But maybe a Benton could if he really if that production really ticks up. I mean, we'll see.
All right. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add to that conversation about cash and cap and?
No, I had one other separate thought, but if you have anything else you want to add to wrap it up, feel free.
Go ahead. What's your separate thought?
Just seen the local media discuss, does George Pickens need a mentor? I think that was on The Fan. I popped up on my phone today. And I kind of laugh at that a little bit. Maybe you do too, Dave, because they've had veteran mentors the last 2 years, Allen Robinson and Van Jefferson. And so I don't think a mentor is going to do the trick. He's probably had players and coaches, and Chad Johnson's called him, and he's had guys in his ear. I think he's aware of, what professionalism looks like. It's really just about whether or not George Pickens can enact upon that or not. It's really all up to George.
Yeah, he already knows how this league works now, and he's been around enough veteran type of guys, whether they be in his position group or otherwise, that he's going to have to want to develop more as a good teammate, good leader. Not that he's not a great teammate or whatnot, but less diva-ish, I guess, less more accountable on and off the field kind of situation where bringing in a Devontae Adams isn't going to have this hugely impact on George Pickens, other than him maybe learning some tools of the trade, as far as route running and reading defenses and stuff like that. It's not going to have this huge mentor-student impact that I think these media guys are trying to make it sound like. If he was maybe a year or two younger, but once again, like you said, they brought in the Allen Robinsons. You had the Van Jeffersons. He's been surrounded by good guys. That bringing in one more for him, to me, it's got to come from George Pickens, the development and growth at this point.
Agree. The only counterpoint I think you could make to that is to sit there and say, yeah, you bring in Robinson and Jefferson, but they're not high-level guys. They're not in that same tier as Pickens, and so maybe it's harder to relate. So if you brought in a Devontae Adams, who's that kind of alpha, I've been a number one receiver. Robinson and Jefferson have had their moments in the past.
Right.
Currently, I'm that dude. Could that maybe click and resonate with Pickens? More speculation, but I still am skeptical of it. The only other thing I can think of is if you bring in a veteran receiver and George just realizes, because I think part of what Pickens understands is the Steelers need George Pickens. They needed him in 2024. He was he was basically their most valuable player offensively, even above quarterback, because if you lost him, you had nothing at receiver. And when you know that you're the most valuable guy and they can't live without you, you can do whatever you want and they can't do anything to kind of stop you because they need you more than you need them. If you brought in another veteran receiver and it wasn't just George Pickens and we're pinning all our hopes on him, maybe he understands, okay, they don't need me as much as they used to. And so I have to act a different way. Just me thinking out loud.
Here's something else related to the money with him. If you go back and look at some of the stat pools and the analytics and all like that, look, George Pickens has been absolutely fantastic. But has he even gotten himself in a position, both on and off the field yet, where he seriously should be thinking that he should be a $30 million player?
It's a really good question.
This off season.
It's a really good question, and the numbers alone wouldn't suggest that. Had he, not missed those 3 games, his stat line would look a little more impressive. But we know this guy is so uber talented, and he's still young, and will still be young next year. I don't know exactly what his market value is right now, but it's still trending closer towards that, just because the guy is, from a talent standpoint, he is still off the charts.
Right. But I mean, let's look at what the wide receiver market is real quick here. And we, 30 million would be at the absolute ceiling that you could see him shooting for. And even that would not put him, top of the market. Right. I mean, let's even look at 28 million, there. Has he done enough where he should get 28 million, even if and no full guarantees past this year? Is he worth that kind of investment in him this offseason?
Let me ask it a different way. If he was a free agent currently, a pending free agent, where would he rank among the current crop of pending free agent wide receivers?
Well, he'd obviously be up there for sure.
But how up there? I mean, would he be behind T. Higgins?
I think he would, because
I think so too.
T. Higgins is a been there, done that, and you got a track record with attitude, and look, he's still got deep in it. They all do, right? But I would rank him. I would rank him behind Pickett, behind Higgins.
But would he be behind anybody else? I don't think he would. How often does a 20, let's even put a year on him, 26-year-old in his prime, uber talented receiver hit the open market?
Right, because they get tagged. If they're worth their, it's hard to use that argument because great receivers generally either get traded or they don't hit free agency.
Right. So if he did, his market value would be, really, really sky high.
Right, but he's not.
I think he would be.
But he's not but he's not.
No, I know. I'm just, I'm fast forwarding a year. The same conversation will apply if he does happen to hit free agency a year from now. Like, what is his market value? I mean, it's, some.
Well, and that's what I think he should be playing to. Where I'm going with this is, if he can't be a top 5, top 7 market guy, especially with no guarantees past this year, why would he even accept, why? In other words, in his head right now, he should be thinking, I'm not going to get the deal that I think that I'm worth in Pittsburgh this offseason. I'm not just going to settle for, so I'm just going to screw my head on a little bit tighter here, and I'm going to play to get to hit the lottery next offseason from somebody.
You're saying that should be his mindset?
Yes.
I agree, but that should have been his mindset for 2024, because if he had a great season and been squeaky clean from a drama standpoint, to use whatever, for lack of a better word, he would be paid now. He'd be paid this offseason.
I guess where I'm kind of going, we've had the conversations about how much of a headache George Pickens may or may not be this offseason, and I've been kind of under the thought of, I think we're gonna be writing and talking about him a lot, and here we are. I mean, we're talking about him a lot, but I almost kind of wonder if he's kind of accepted the fact, him and his agent, that it's not going to do me any good to. Now, look, OTAs aside, I'm not expecting him there,
Mhm.
But beyond that, getting into a training camp, I don't think it behooves him uh, to to have any negativity associated with him when it comes to that, especially when he's probably not going to get the deal that he wants.
Yeah, but public pressure is public pressure,
Mhm.
and you wanna make them look like the bad guy, not yourself. And also just practically, okay, maybe he doesn't do those things. Maybe there is no social media noise, but does he hold in during training camp? If, hey, I don't wanna get hurt in training camp because I'm in a contract year.
Right.
I need to be healthy for week
Sure.
1. I'm not doing anything until week 1 gets started. At the very least, that's gonna be a big story in and of itself, and a more impactful story than George Pickens deletes social media in June. That's a story, but that materially doesn't impact the team, and no one really cares. But if he's holding in, that becomes an actual story.
Will George Pickens get enough credit if he does show up at OTAs?
I don't think you give a whole lot of credit for guys showing up. I mean, he was only at like half the OTAs this past year. I'm pretty sure he was not there every single day. So I think I don't think he's going to show up.
Will George Pickens get enough credit if he doesn't perform any kind of training camps hold in?
If he doesn't hold in,
Right.
yeah, I think you give him credit for going out there. I mean, you saw uh, Pat Fryermuth go through training camp this year. Najee Harris went through training camp this year, full bore. No, they didn't ever hold themselves out. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think you give it. I don't think in general you ever give guys a lot of credit for practicing, doing their actual job. But yeah, I think you would appreciate that if he did.
All right. I don't even know how we got to some of these topics today.
The working title of the podcast.
All right.
All right, Dave. I think we've kind of run through it pretty good. So, anything else to talk about? If not, we can get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right. We've had kind of a cash theme today, and Joshua DeLorita, I think, from Akron, writes in, says, I would love to hear a quick analysis of where Cleveland is with their cap and financial health. Where are they at with the massive Watson contract, and what consequences will a Myles Garrett trade have for them? He says, as a Steelers fan living in Northeast Ohio, I need to have my facts straight when I'm talking crap to my friends, coworkers, and family. He says, Browns Twitter has their fans believing Andrew Berry is a cap genius, and they are in great shape heading into the offseason. Thank you for the content and all like that, he says. All right, let's start first and foremost with the supposed cap space that the Browns have right now. They are let's see, negative 24. They're 24.3 million over, and their effective cap space is even worse at 32.7 over. So they obviously have a lot of work to do, not only to get compliant, but have working. And here's the other thing: I don't know quite. I want to see what their cash spending was for last year. They spent obviously a lot of cash last offseason there. They're going to have to restructure that Deshaun Watson contract again, unless they can find some legalities that limit the guarantees because of some of his off the field kind of stuff and all like that. So it's hard to kind of speak on that, but they're going to have to, unfortunately, that contract's just bad and an albatross around her neck, and will continue to be however much time he's left on the roster. So they are going to have to restructure his contract, and I think a lot of people are expecting them to do that. And if they do that and they can't find a loophole to get out of it, they are going to free up, I think, 35.8 million, nearly 35.8 million in 2025 cap space by doing a traditional. They're just going to have to throw bad cash after bad cash at him to help with the cap aspect if they're unable to get out of some of the future guaranteed salary with this thing. So
Yeah, kind of crazy.
right. So within that, we just solved their cap space dilemma, at least when it comes to what you call effective cap space, because they're 32.7 in the hole when it comes to that right now, and one restructure can get them out of that, even though it's throwing bad cash after bad cash. Does that make sense, Alex?
It does. Didn't they just restructure him though before They did a restructure with him though.
Last offseason, right?
No, like a month or 2 ago, didn't they? I
Did
didn't
they?
They did something with him with his contract. I thought before they realized he tore his Achilles for the second time. I thought there was some other restructure, some sort of money they moved around. In December of 2024, they agreed to restructure his contract. Not entirely sure what it was. It added 2 void years to his contract, extending his dead salary through 2030.
Well, he's still technically, according over the cap, on the books for a base salary of $46 million. So it feels like they're going to have to do something to that again.
It might have
They
been just
can.
the void years they added. I'm not. I don't know. You'll know it better than I
Yeah.
do. But I think that was that. Maybe that's what they just added void years to his deal.
Right. They're obviously going to have to do something with this contract.
Yeah. Yeah. What a mess.
Beyond that, let's look at Myles Garrett real quick. With his situation, he does not have an exorbitant. I mean, overall, he's scheduled to count 19 point. I gotta look according to over cap, 19.7. Obviously, if you traded him pre June 1st, you would take a little bit of a bath of a cap hit of $16.5 million more. You're going to take a bath on that. That's hard. That's why they're probably so apt to come out and say we're not going. They would have to get offered a pretty substantial return, obviously first round draft picks and all like that to get rid of him. He's in a unique situation overall there, but they could take upwards of a $16.5 million bath on him against the cap if they traded him.
Yeah, I think Cleveland is in a real lose-lose situation here because if you trade Garrett before June 1st, you're already screwed cap-wise. You hurt yourself even more. If you wait till post-June 1st, you no longer get draft capital for 2025, and you get picks for next year, which says, hello, firing line for Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. So, unless they basically have to somehow convince Myles Garrett to remain a Cleveland Brown, and he seems adamant that he does not want to be a Cleveland Brown.
Right. Looking elsewhere within this, Denzel Ward, they might have to restructure him this offseason to free up. Let's see, if you restructured him traditionally, they can free up $9 million in cap space that way. So probably going to have to do that. What's going to happen with Jack Conklin?
I think he was healthy this year. Did he get healthy this year? I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, but isn't their right tackle the kid now? And
well, Dawan Jones just had knee surgery. I mean,
right.
I don't know exactly the status of that, but
I
Jedrick Wills is a free agent.
Yeah, I think Conklin's going to get cut. Believe it or not.
Could be. Yeah, I mean, he's older, injury issues.
And you can free up $14 million that way if you cut or trade him. What's going to happen with Batonio?
Yeah, I mean, the O-line's really aging out, and that once strong Browns front. It's like Pittsburgh with Pouncey. That whole group aged out and got hurt. That's where Cleveland's at right now.
Right. And they don't have a lot of guys that have exorbitant cap numbers, moving down the list past, Watson, Ward, Garrett, Conklin. I mean, might they have to part ways? Look, here's the long story short. They are obviously got to get cap compliant. They will. There's some obvious stuff in here. Sounds like with the Deshaun Watson thing. Obviously, if they sign Myles Garrett to a new deal, they should be able to lower his cap number a little bit. They're absolutely probably not going to be huge players in free agency though, right?
Oh, I can't imagine that they would be. And who wants to come to Cleveland right now?
Right.
What do you
So,
think happens to Myles Garrett? If you get a prediction, what is the ultimate
man, that guy
course?
just seems like he's decided he wants out of there.
He has, but
And I think when push comes to shove, I think you got to accommodate that now, man. I think you got to accept that we we screwed the pooch with Watson, and as a byproduct, you made Myles Garrett mad. Evidently, Garrett came to the team and said, "Look, give me a plan that makes me think we're going to be a winner," and that didn't fly. Whatever that plan or whatever they told him didn't fly. That he came out right ahead of the Super Bowl at the perfect time to do it and say, "I want out of here." I think you got to try your best to reset. And I think part of that means saying that you're not going to trade Myles Garrett, but answering the phone when it rings and trying to get the best deal you can for him.
Sure, they have to say they're not going to trade him to try to drive up the price tag. But okay, does he get traded before June 1st or post June 1st?
I think you got to
That's
try
the
to trade
dilemma.
him before the draft, Alex. I think you got to start trying to use those. I think you try to get the haul now and start, because they're not going to. I don't think they're going to be very active in free agency. I think you got to start rebuilding the nucleus of this team via the draft.
I agree, but then financially you have to work that out because, like you said, the giant path they're going to take.
Right. Look. I mean, what are you doing if you're Myles Garrett right now? And I don't want to make this Browns Depot, but it's a great question. I mean, these are teams we talk about teams in the division all the time, and it's a good question. The reader had a question. I mean, the listener had a question about it, and I think it's respectful that we answer it.
Yeah, and Myles Garrett's one of the top players in football, a guy you see twice a year. So what happens to him is very important and pertinent to Pittsburgh. So
What do you do if you're Myles Garrett, Alex?
I think he's doing the right thing. He's out of the public eye for now. He did his media tour during Super Bowl week. You don't want to do that forever because then people start tuning you out and maybe it gets a little annoying. But I think around free agency, you maybe perk up a little bit, go on a couple interviews and make it clear that, like, hey, I still want out. And, before teams start spending a bunch of money in free agency, start putting some pressure on of, hey, somebody come trade for me.
Right.
Is that your plan?
Yeah. I mean, I think look, he's already got money in the bank now, right? And he's going to get more money in the bank, whatever happens here. Why not use this as use the Browns' bad decision making with Deshaun Watson against them and get his way out of town and on a potential winner.
Yeah, and I'm hoping he does.
Yeah. So look, if you're going to talk trash to your friends and all about the Browns, you center that around. They're going to have to throw more bad cash after bad cash on Deshaun Watson. They're probably going to have to part ways with a veteran or two elsewhere on this roster that they probably didn't want to. They're probably going to be forced to trade Myles Garrett in this thing. And they're probably not going to be huge players in free agency.
But even if you hate the Garrett and the Brown stock again, and again, I think you got to write a post on this, Dave. Or I'm maybe tweet it after the podcast. No one's talking about the need to get a TJ Watt deal done soon because Garrett could conceivably get traded and extended at any time. It could be tomorrow. Probably won't be, but it could happen at any time. And if that does, I think it's going to really put Pittsburgh in a bind.
Right. And let's real quick, one last thing, go back over what the position looks like as far as edge rushers right now. Did you see the thing about Bosa supposed to be cut?
Someone had said that. Yeah, I don't know the story behind that though.
Yeah. One of the Los Angeles Bosa. Nick Bosa currently is 34 million. And he leads the list. And Josh Allen is the second leading edge rusher right now at 28.25. Obviously, TJ Watt thinks he's going to demand more than 34 million. Is Garrett going to try to hit 40?
He's going to try. I think.
And if he comes up short,
how much shorter? 37, 38. And again, and just to be clear, the issue with Watt is if you extend him and Pittsburgh is still going to keep their second year, third year guarantees, which is almost a must for a Watt extension.
Right.
Their philosophy is we only do that for quarterbacks and for players who are the highest paid at their position. And so for them to stay consistent, Watt would then have to surpass Garrett or Parsons if those guys get paid first. And now you're talking about paying TJ Watt 38, 39, 40 million per
Right.
year.
Right. If you want to avoid the 40 million number, if you want to avoid TJ Watt becoming the highest paid non-quarterback, well, he's probably going to end up hitting that anyway. But if you don't want that number to be 40 million, you got to do that earlier rather than later,
Right.
especially with the Cowboys, Parsons and with Garrett here.
You got to pay Watt 35 million per year, so he jumps Bosa, and then Garrett and Parsons will leap him later this year.
And how fresh is the Max Crosby deal right now?
Ooh, that is a good question.
He's signing what,
He's
2022, right? So, and he's not the happiest guy in Las Vegas right now.
no, there's been a lot of rumors and buzz on him not winning. He's signed through 2026, but he's a
Right.
guy that's underpaid and would be worthy of an extension, especially if the Raiders want to keep him around with the new regime out there in Las Vegas.
And he is in, if he's going to start screaming for more money, even though he's under contract, his contract voids after 2026. So it wouldn't be totally out of the question for him to scream for more money right now.
No, not at all. And if he gets traded, hypothetically, which isn't a crazy, crazy idea, then he would probably get extended as part of that, part of the conditions, and reset the market himself.
Right. So, that's something definitely to consider within all this.
But if you're Watts game, you sit there and say, we're gonna wait this one out. We're not gonna do a deal right now. We're gonna let Garrett get paid, and then we're gonna try to jump him, knowing the spot Pittsburgh has put themselves in.
Right.
Be interesting.
All right. All right. We've run a little bit long here. We hit on the Omar Khan combine date and all like that. All right. We will be back on Monday, right?
Yep, be back on Monday for probably another 2-hour show when we had literally nothing to talk about coming into today's show. So we always find ways. These are always fun conversations.
All right. Let's see. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right, navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. That way, we've got an app and all like that at the iOS store if you want to hit up that and download it and all. And after this weekend, Alex and I'll be back at it on Monday. So until then, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.